MusicalTalk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Musical Talk. My name is Nick Hudson. We have our window open in the studio tonight because it's very, very warm, so you'll forgive any rattling of trains and squeaks you might hear, but it might be appropriate for the subject matter we're going to be talking tonight. Joining me is Hannah. Hello, Hannah.
Hello, Nick.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. You went to see only last night Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which is flying... She's flying around the UK, isn't she?
She is indeed.
On a UK tour. And how familiar are you with this musical?
So, film-wise, it was a classic when I was younger.
Yeah.
And it's funny. So I went with my mum to go and see this show, and we went to the lovely Princess Theatre Torquay, and it's one of my home venues, and they've just had it redone as well. So shout out to them for just having
But no air conditioning.
Oh my goodness. If there was, it wasn't on.
There were, yeah.
Yeah, if it went, it went on. But yes, it was a warm one. But when I'm watching a show, all I can think of is I hate when the audience moans that they're hot, because you've got a cast on stage that have got lights on them and costumes and wigs and makeup
dancing.
and they're dancing and
Yeah.
singing. They're a darn sight hotter than you are, so just sit in your seat and enjoy it.
Exactly.
So I'm not one for complaint. Like, it was fine. The seats were comfy. Yeah, shout out to them for their refurb because it was beautiful.
And had you've been there before?
I have. I've been there a lot. It's Torquay and the Theatre Royal in Plymouth are my two home theatres.
So what had the refurb done that was so lovely? It's an ATG
It is
house.
an ATG. Can't talk. Sorry, an ATG theatre. So they stripped out the whole auditorium.
Yeah.
Every row's got new seats. I think they might have taken a row out for extra leg room. New carpets. They've replaced all the red with blue, so it blends in a lot nicer when
Lovely.
the house lights are off. Yeah, very comfy, very lovely. But as for the piece, I watched the film when I was younger. And I was saying this to my mum in the car on the way back. I was like, as a child watching the film, I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea if they were...
Flying car.
Well, not even that, but I was so confused because I was like, is this really happening? Is it just a dream? Is it just they're on the beach telling a story to each other? Has the tide come in and have they died? Like, I was just so baffled by the actual story.
How familiar were you with Bedknobs and Broomsticks?
Oh, loved it. This is the thing, is as a child, classic Sherman Brothers, I was very confused as a child, story-wise, by the blend of Mary Poppins, Chitty, and Bedknobs and Broomsticks. So to me, as a child who loved all three films independently, my 6-year-old brain, 5-year-old brain, would just mash them all together, and I'd watch Mary Poppins and I'd be like, this isn't the bamboo one.
No. But it might as well be.
Step in Time.
Might as well, because Step in Time is so similar.
Exactly. And
the Sherman Brothers had to get permission from Disney to kind of migrate away from the Disney studios to work with the Broccoli family on this film.
Because another thing I said to my mum was, we were just on our way back discussing it, and I said, it's so funny because you're sitting there watching it and you're thinking, oh, this is Step in Time. Oh, this is our perfect nanny song, and this is this song, and this is
like
Super
Hush
Cali.
By Mountain is the same chord progression as
Feed the
Chim
Birds.
Chimney.
Is it?
Yeah.
I was going to say Feed the Birds because that's kind of vibe it gives, but that's interesting. There's another one in it that I thought, oh, this is the We're Our Nanny song. But yeah, I mean, it's their signature kind of style, so you're going to expect that. And I do like how I was in the queue for the bar during the interval, and the couple in front of me were talking about, oh, well, the Sherman Brothers wrote the songs, and they were very inspired by old London Cockney songs, and you can see that in Step in Time and in Old Bamboo. And I'm sat there thinking, like, isn't that just common knowledge at this point? But no, so as a child, I was very familiar with the film, just confused by the plot. And I did say it's nice to see this show as an adult, because I don't know because I didn't watch the film before seeing this either. I wanted to go in with like a fresh view of it, because I've not seen the stage show before. And I don't know whether it simplifies the plot or whether it's just better explained, or whether I understand it better because I'm older. But my mum said that even as an adult watching it with us when we were younger, same for Bedknobs, she was like, I didn't understand what was going on when you were watching those films. I never understood. So she said,
both of them almost Bedknobs and Chitty, though it's never really mentioned, it is about defeating the Nazis, isn't it?
Effectively. But that's only something you kind of establish when you're older and you look back and you've learnt about history.
Do you know who wrote the screenplay for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? The script for the film.
Wasn't Ian Fleming, was it?
No, but if you think of The Childcatcher, and would you be surprised to hear that Roald Dahl wrote and created that character?
Yeah. I've heard that before. Locked away in the deep vaults of my memory.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is a role that I was kind of underwhelmed with on this one, I gotta say.
We have a programme here, so I'll be flicking through this. I didn't see the show. The Childcatcher, when I saw it at the London Palladium 1,000 million years ago, was played by Richard O'Brien.
Oh, I bet he was so good.
Here it's played by a woman called Charlie Brooks. Not Charlie Brooker.
No, but do you know who Charlie Brooks is?
I do not know who Charlie Brooks is.
Have you ever watched this programme that's quite popular in this country called EastEnders?
No.
Oh, for Christ's sake. Right, posh boy.
Sorry.
But no, she was in EastEnders. And she was very good. Very, very good in this role. And couldn't fault her. But the Childcatcher to me, and I don't know if this was... I was going to ask you this. Just because, listener, we haven't actually discussed this since... I've literally just got back. And we were like, let's record an episode. So I haven't actually had a chance to talk to Nick about it yet. Was... How big of a role was the Childcatcher when you saw it?
22 years ago.
No, I know. I'm just asking, like, if you can remember something vaguely.
I remember he was a very physical performer. But do you remember when we saw Hello Dolly, forgive the train, sorry, at the London Palladium? And you
will find, dear listener, there is more trains in this than there were in Starlight Express.
And we looked up to the top of the auditorium and I said, that's where Richard O'Brien
was caught in
his net and lifted all the way up. So you remember that bit, and I remember he had a song, and it was the way he said his words. It was all very...
I was just wondering how much sort of, not screen time, but like stage time he had.
Well, he would kind of, I really don't remember, but he would just kind of, he had his cart where he would collect all the children. He had a song called Kiddie Winkies, I think.
Yeah, that's still in it.
And he would just kind of wander along and kind of get booed by the audience.
The thing that I found was...
But I can't remember.
That the Childcatcher's hardly in this.
Yeah.
Hardly in it. And I just think it's such an integral part of the story. You think of Chitty and you think of the car and you think of the Childcatcher. Like, they're the two big things you think of. So for the Childcatcher to hardly be in it is a bit of like a little bit of a letdown. I was a bit like, I wanted more from you. The number was great. Her costume, stunning. Whoever, I haven't checked to see who did the costumes for this one, but oh my goodness, I want that outfit, that fitted black jacket with the boots and the Manila Luzon style wig with the black and white. Love it. And the way that she had her makeup done, almost like Joker-esque, to like with smile. Oh.
So the certain costume design was Morgan Large.
Oh my goodness.
So bravo.
Incredible.
And especially for the Baroness's costume as well, which I presume we'll talk about later.
Yes, I will. But yes, I thought she was really good in the role. I just wish she could have been on stage and there was more of her. Because I feel like when they promote these shows as well, they're like featuring Charlie Brooks as the Childcatcher.
Yeah.
And then she's not in it. Well, she is, but
not enough.
Not for very much. And I just think for these shows to have these stars to come in and play these roles, and she did an amazing job, to then really hit home on the advertising with that and then not have them feature very heavily in this show. It's a bit like, it doesn't feel like a missed opportunity, but it kind of does at the same time.
I mean, maybe it might be that the Childcatcher was in it originally when I saw it, and then they cut it back because it was too scary or something. I don't know, but
that's part of the like the thing of this show is, as a child, it's meant to scare you, you know. So
I seem to remember there when I saw it at the Palladium, like too many songs.
There are a fair few,
and a lot of like the comedy couple, the Baroness and the Baron. and a lot of the grandpa
So
pots, is that?
Yeah. I feel like this whole show, and I said to my mum, and we came away from it and we both agreed, was too pantomime-y. Like, the child catcher comes out, it's like, "Bleh." And like,
is that the show's fault, or is that the audience's fault?
I'd say it's more audience.
Was that just our culture's fault?
I wish theatre etiquette was more a thing. I feel like we need to do an episode on theatre etiquette, because we need to educate some of these people. And the audience was an audience of a certain age, I'll say that much. It really frustrated me straight off the bat when the overture started, the classic bit, piece of music for Chitty started, and the whole audience is there going... And I'm just thinking, I'm here to hear that orchestra. I'm not here to hear this whole place clap along. And like, it really felt wartimey. And I get it, because the piece starts in like the 20s and, the old Grand Prix and stuff like that. And it may well give a bit of that feel, and the audience may well, have that kind of nostalgia. But when I've paid 60 odd quid for a ticket, I want to hear that orchestra. I don't want to hear you clapping along, please. And likewise, when the child catcher came out, I thought, we're not here to see a pantomime. I felt like the whole time during the show, I felt like I was at a town hall pantomime.
Okay.
From the way that people clapped along, from the way that the child catcher was being booed, from the slapstick comedy elements, from the two spies, as well as the Baron and the Baroness, and the lack of set. Oh, that's a big one I'm here to discuss, because I understand it's a touring production. I get that, and I get that in order to make it feasible to tour, you can't have massive set pieces. It's not going to be like your Moulin Rouges or your Hello Dollys or your Frozens. I get that completely, but it does make it feel a bit pantomime-y when the whole thing just relies on backdrops.
Do you mean backdrops as in painted cloths, or digital backdrops?
Painted cloths.
Okay.
So the Baron's one was like at the front, and that came down, and it's obvious that it's like, oh, now they're doing a scene change back there, because this one's come down at the front and they're doing a little bit, really downstage.
Scenes behind the cloths.
Yeah. It's like, oh, there was a plain blue one.
Yeah.
That was up for most of it. And then that had like all the workings out on and like diagrams and things. The wings were that same kind of thing. And there was one, the screen that comes on, there's probably a technical term for it, where it, like, if it's lit behind, you
Gauze.
can... Yeah, that's it.
Scrim.
Okay, there you go. They had that.
Yeah.
And there was one that came up with the clouds on it as well. But other than that...
Did it have a curtain when you walk in the auditorium telling you what show you were seeing?
Yes, it did. It was plain blue, and projected on it said Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. So it wasn't even... It was just a projection.
Yeah.
Which, when people went and sat down on the balcony, the projector wobbled, and I was just like, oh.
So when I saw it at the Palladium, we had...
Sorry, it's my chair.
When it was the Sweet Factory, it was the biggest set piece that had ever been created at the time.
See, this whole factory
and it had
scene.
a real spinning windmill with the blades going like above the proscenium arch and things.
Right. So there was no windmill in this production.
Okay.
Was
there a car? Because it sounds like they cut that as well.
There was no windmill. They made reference to it in the script, but they hadn't have mentioned it. I completely forgot they lived in a bloody windmill. I thought, oh yeah, his neighbours with Jonathan Creek. But no, there was no windmill. They mentioned it, like One Windmill Avenue, they live in a windmill, but other than that, there was no mention of it.
Did it have his, like, the machines that he'd made that kind of...
the breakfast one, and...
was that fun, or... Okay, so...
It was on like a pushy... You know when we did the filming thing and there was the little hostess trolley?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like one of those, but like you'd get in a canteen, is what it was set on, and then it was built on top of that.
Because the Palladium one was in like 4 parts, and it would have
it was smaller than this desk you've got in the studio.
For those of you not in the room, not very big. Obviously, the money has been spent somewhere in this show, which is in the car itself, because it's had a bit of a difficult time.
It has had a difficult time. The car itself, amazing. Beautiful, beautiful car. And I feel that is what people go to see, is the car.
Did it rise up from the stage, or did it come on from the wings?
So it came on from the wings. In order to do that, that's why they had that front drop down, so that then you know that they're back there.
A tab scene is a technical term.
Yeah, and they're lift. They've raised the back drops and they're pushing it out, and it was your classic Starfield and Cherry Picker, which is fine, absolutely fine. It's a classic technique. However, I feel like they haven't considered lighting. So I was sat in the 4th row of the stalls, so row D. And I was on the end in the central aisle. So I was kind of like as good of a seat as you're going to get in the theatre. And the way that the car works is, I feel it was very beneficial for those sat up on the balcony, because we don't have... Torquay is literally just like your stalls and then one balcony. Very beneficial to those sat there. But if you're in the stalls, or as close as I was, the way that it's lit... all you can see at some point is the arm. And I kind of feel like maybe that needs looking at, because it took away from it.
I remember when I saw it, the only source of lighting in the scene was the car itself.
Oh, I bet that would have been good. No,
Which is how it's meant to be, because...
No, it was all spotlit and front lit.
Okay.
So, and you had your Starfield behind.
Yeah.
But yeah, when the lights were coming through from the front... It was when it hit, because it was moving as well, and it was tilting, and it was incredible. Like the wheels would lift, so
did it go over the audience?
No.
Okay, so in the Palladium, it went over the audience.
Of course it did
as well.
Of course it did.
I know it's unfair to compare the two, but that's my only.
Yeah. It's the only one that you've seen, so it's the only one that you can compare it to, which is fine. But it is like comparing your music work with John Williams. Yeah. You know what I mean? No disrespect, but they're too big.
Oh, anyone's music work to John Williams.
Yeah, exactly. So it worked for the space, and I get it on a touring production. You've got different size venues. What you've got has got to work with every space that you work in. So I get it completely. But I just feel like looking at that lighting would have just helped a little bit, because all of a sudden, because of the height of the car and where I was sat, you couldn't see underneath it and the arm, and that's all you could see, because it had come so far forward, and in order to get it there, obviously the arm stretched out as far as it can be, so you can't see a lot else. There was a bit where they were falling off the cliff and they were tilting forward, and that was so much more effective than being sideways on. And I wish there was more of that front-facingness, because everything was concealed a lot more. I get it. It's clever. They're doing as much as they can with what the technology that's been available to them. I get it. But it does it's almost like they're trying to do too much. Less is more. It looks a lot more effective in certain lights. It's very good. Very clever.
Do you... wish you were sitting more in the dress circle?
Yes and no, because I'm a girl that loves details. I love sitting close enough that I can see the rhinestoning on the costumes and what shoes they're wearing. So
what suspenders they're wearing.
You know me. Because I love that level of detail, like looking at the props and seeing that in the sweet shop that it was like what they'd use was, it looked like glittery Christmas decorations. I loved it though. It's so clever. That's such a good idea.
Yeah.
And it's things like that. They probably weren't. They were probably all handmade. And it's things like the giant ice cream that came out that the kiddie catcher gave, like seeing the textures of what that's made from and things like that. Like that's what I love to see. And if I'm sat really close, I love seeing the wear on like the footwear, like the actual like scuffs and things on the shoes, where you can see that they've done so many performances and things like that. I love that element of it. So to be able to see that, I like to be further forward, but I feel for the element of the car, it's more...
You have opera glasses for those, though.
Not in these theatres these days. Sorry that, you're used to going to the ye olde Opry House.
Wicked has opera glasses.
Not when we saw it, it didn't.
Yeah.
Did it?
Yeah, just not where we were sitting because we were close. But if you were further back, for £1, you too can get a pair of binoculars. Just bring your own. That's what some people do.
But yeah, elements like that's obviously where the budget's gone.
Yeah.
The Too Sweet scene and things like that again are scaled back. And I just wish there was a bit more of a set. Like we got props, but against just a pale blue backdrop. I just wanted a bit.
Especially if they're promising like a truly, which is the tagline is a truly scrumptious new musical. Like if they're promising it to be incredible, and the show has a certain stigma attached to it, because it did premiere at the Palladium and it does have a flying car. You expect everything else to kind of match around that, but
so I mean, I hate to compare shows, but when I look at seeing Aladdin or Mary Poppins, a classic one, because Mary Poppins is compared in the live action films and I think it easily gets compared as a stage show, but when I saw Mary Poppins as a touring production, I got that wow factor still. Whereas...
And do you think some people go into the show thinking it's a Disney musical?
I think a lot of people do, because I think a lot of people associate it as being a Disney film, and I think that's purely down to the songs being the Sherman Brothers, because they're so closely associated with Disney. I think it's just that if you don't know that it isn't.
Did you like the songs? Or
I do like the songs in it. Some of them are just a bit like, oh, come on, skip this one. You know what I mean?
Because they wrote a whole load of new songs for the stage show, so the film doesn't have 48 songs.
There's one of the new ones that for me was the highlight of the show, and it gave that bit of a wow factor that I wish the rest of the show had, and it was the Bombi Salsa. Samba. I loved that. Oh my god, that whole I loved it.
But you love that sound anyway, don't you?
True, but I also, the Baroness was my favourite character out of this entire show, and the fact that my mum during the interval looked over when we were talking about the Baroness, and I said, oh, she's just me. My mum sat there and she said, yeah. I was watching her and hearing what she was saying, and I thought, that's Hannah. That's Hannah.
So who plays the Baroness?
She was a shout out because she was...
Jenny Gaynor played the Baroness.
Oh my goodness, she was in...
To Art said, well, there you go.
Incredible, I know. I said to Nick, there's a few who train down the road. She was so good. So good. And she did the splits.
Yeah. Well, was she good because you liked the character? Or was she good because
so to start with, I wasn't a huge fan of the Baroness character, but the more time she spent on stage and the more... So she was so, like, pulling faces, the way that she delivered her lines. She was funny, but not in a completely slapstick way. It was just the way that she came across was...
Do you know
so
who I
good.
saw as the Baron?
Who?
Brian Blessed.
Oh!
And opposite him was a wonderful actress, opera singer called Nicola McAuliffe.
Okay.
But you can imagine Brian Blessed playing this
the larger-than-life
character.
Baron. I liked the fair scene. I loved the music in that scene as well. I thought that was beautiful. And again, the costumes, the way that they did it was... They put just like a carousel thing on shoulders, and then the same with like a helter-skelter. So it was minimal, but you kind of... And they did like a maypole thing, and they all kind of like twirled around. I loved that. Some of the choreography I felt could be stronger, but I loved that they kind of saved it for that scene where there were flips and there were things going on.
Was that when the old bamboo is?
Yeah.
Now made famous by Family Guy.
Yeah. I think, though, that scene's going to be interesting because I overheard that... I mean, I knew that they're doing a cast swap midway through the tour anyway because I know...
Isn't it a drag queen going in?
Yeah, the Vivian's going in as a child catcher. So the Vivian is currently playing the Wicked Witch, and now she's going in as a child catcher. So I am very excited for that. If she does it here, I might go and see the show again.
I think it's done Wimbledon.
I know she's doing it in Plymouth, and I'm like, do I go back down to go and see her in it? But again, if I'm going to go and see the show just for her, and the minimal time that now I know that character is on stage, I'm like,
go and see the Wizard of Oz if you want to see...
I saw a clip of that. I think that's all I need to see. But yes, but apparently the person that's going in as Caractacus is... Caractacus, I was right. Is a trained tap dancer.
Okay.
I mean, the person... what was his name? Garcia.
Adam Garcia was very good dancer.
Incredible. Very,
I saw in the London Palladium production many years ago of Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, okay.
And then when Wicked opened in London, he played Fiyero.
Oh, no. He had a beautiful voice.
Yeah.
Beautiful voice.
Australian.
The guy that played Grandpa Potts as well. Oh, so good.
Liam Fox.
So good. The cast was so strong. I cannot fault the cast at all. They were all so strong. Even the little boy we had as Jeremy, who kept like fluffing up his lines every now and then, but bless him, he carried on. And
it's interesting. 2 leads come from EastEnders, which is a very kind of touring thing to do in this country. It's either like EastEnders or Coronation Street, and sometimes they're great.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're not so great.
On this occasion, I could not fault the cast. They were incredible, and you can see how hard they're working.
And Eddie Nunn plays Trudy Scrumptious, who's Trevor Nunn's daughter. Originally played by Emma Williams.
She's got a beautiful voice. It's just a shame that the character of Trudy is just a bit wishy-washy.
Yeah, but I think that's the era, probably.
She started out by being like really strong, because there was the odd dig made of like, you can't do that, you're a woman. And the whole audience goes, ooh.
Or pantomime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then she came back with a quip and everyone's like, yeah. And I was like, oh God, here we go. But she's...
And that's a Devon audience. I mean, they're...
Torquay, please.
And they're quite... Torquados. Are they generally like that well behaved, or is it because lots of kids were in, so they were like, oh, this is like a pantomime in the summer?
I have to say, the most... things that I've seen there was Rocky. Yeah. So I saw Rocky Horror there a fair few times, and that is just an experience in itself when it comes to joining in and audience participation. So and Plymouth and Torquay are good crowds to go and see that show in. So they can be like that. I know if you've got the right crowds in that know what they're doing, but I don't know. I think pantomime I know that pantomime is such a big thing in this country anyway, but I feel in that little area of the West Country, pantomime is cherished. It's like such a high standing thing. There are so many small community groups. It doesn't matter if they have the facilities like the Princess Theatre that they can perform on, or a village hall or a town hall. There are so many that almost every village or every town has its own Amdram group, and every year they're going to put on a pantomime, or every other year they're going to put on a pantomime. So,
one written by your brother.
Well, yeah, but do you know what I mean? Like, so in the little town that I grew up in.
Don't brush over that.
What? If you want to discuss it so much, get him on here. But the tiny town I grew up in had 2 different groups that would put on a pantomime, so they had to alternate every year. So I feel like down in the deep dark depths of Devon, it is very much a
Cornwall.
No, we don't talk about them.
Talk about Cornwall.
We don't talk about Cornwall. But
Torquay, where you saw this, is in Cornwall, isn't it?
No.
Okay, I thought it was in Devon. I thought it was in Cornwall.
No.
Okay. Would you recommend it to people who like the musical?
I'd say if you like the film, go, because I knew nothing about the musical, so I didn't know that there were extra songs thrown in. I didn't know anything. I didn't know how scaled back the plot was or things. I'd say if you like the film, go and see it. There was a few moments, like, you know, when Grandpa Potts gets taken away in his toilet, his outhouse. They had that on the blimp. But it was literally attached to a fishing line, and one of the guards came across, and it was all very...
At the Palladium, a blimp flew on stage. Picked up the thing and flew off. And it was
saying about, like, how, he's in a balloon, but the whole thing is just reference to, like, the wings, and they're like, oh, he's in a balloon, he's in a basket, oh, bye. Like, there was a little remote control car that came across, so when they were like, oh, were flying, or like you were meant to see them from a distance, this little remote control car came across with 4 Barbies in it.
Oh.
And they were, the voices
it seems like
were all
drone
pitched up.
technology would be good for a show like that.
Exactly.
To have the car actually like lift off and like a mini car fly over the audio.
So in order to have the car flying, what they did was somebody held the remote control car and like held it above their head and were like, oh, it's flying.
So it's relying more on theatrical suspension of disbelief and conceit to deliver the moment.
Which then gave it that comic element, but it made it feel a lot more pantomime-y,
right,
because of those elements and because there were no set pieces. It was what they did with crates was very creative. It was just crates with a bit creative with like a bit of purple velvet thrown over it, and it's like, oh, and a cushion. Now it's the Bombies beds. Which her costume in that scene was incredible. Shout out again to the costume designer, because the purple corset with like the little like frill thing on the back. And
I want to find the brochure and show it to you from when I saw it. So we'll end that there, but I want to I would genuinely say go and see it. If you like, I came away and I just felt happy. Like after we saw Hello Dolly, there's no major villain I know there's the kitty catcher, but it's hardly in it, so, you know. And the Nazi representation, but other than that...
they were just spies.
Yeah.
From Bulgaria. Oh, there was a cracking line about being vulgar. You've probably heard it 20 years ago. It's like, oh, can we be vulgar and British? And then it was like, no, can we be vulgar and English? And it's like, no, that would make us American. My mum was like, that's the best line in the whole show.
Of course, Ian Fleming who wrote the book, was a spy, which is why he was able to do Jones Bond and all that kind of stuff. So
a lot is lent to that, and it comes through. But I would genuinely say, go and see the show. If you've got little ones as well, that it is very much a family show, and it's very well done.
But imagine if they did a version that was truly dark and truly like taken seriously. Could it work? Because the music is so nursery rhymey and light-hearted. I seem to remember.
Yeah.
Like, could that be a tone it would...
Like a proper gothic version of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Oh, yes. Get me there now. With, like, you know the architecture of the sets in Sister Act?
Yeah.
Give me some of that. Like Chitty style. Give me like a proper gothic-y castle for the Baron and the Baroness.
And did it have 9 million children and dogs that all get picked up at the end?
I don't know if you saw in the back of the programme there, this is something I did wonder. So it said, in the way that they word it made me laugh, children supplied by, but they were from the acting school in Plymouth. So I wondered if that was just for this run in Torquay that they are provided by the acting school in Plymouth.
I know,
and whether it's local to each
I know
venue.
When 1,000 years ago when we had Sue Pollard on and she was doing Miss Havisham in Annie on a tour. Miss Hannigan, sorry.
Now that would be... Everybody stop, let's freeze the orphanage.
It would... I know for each town... they would get like local kids in to play the orphans. So it might as well surprise them, because to chaperone the children across the country would be
I bet it's probably a massive feat for the 8 children that they've got as the leads.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they had 9 children on for this, like the sewer scene, and they had all the dogs as puppets. So they had what's the name of the main dog? It's escaped me now. Edison. Was a lovely puppet and done really well. And then in the Toot Sweet scene as well, they had a load that went across.
Fake ones or real ones?
No, they were puppets. Okay. And the cutest puppet chickens I've ever seen. I kind of want one.
Did it remind you of Bedknobs?
Not really. Okay. Because I think Bedknobs had more scale to it. There was more set. It was more wow. Whereas the show this reminds me of most is Charlie.
Okay.
You know how with Charlie it was all very scaled back and it was all very use your imagination. I feel this is the route they have gone with that. I like the way that they did the race at the start was cute. So, you know, where they started with like the Grand Prix and they're racing. They just had like the 2 headlights on a bar and they were like, and then like pulling back. Yeah. And it did if you have studied drama at all in your life, you can see like your student brain kicks in and you go, oh yeah, well this is this technique that I learned and this is this technique.
So did it seem very school play to you?
It did. I thought one of the things I said when we came away from it is it felt very much like an A-level production, not in a bad way, but just in the way that you can see all the techniques being used and
surprised the whole
minimal
cast, at the end the whole cast didn't kind of do where they are now moments, like the cheesy end of it.
That was one of the things that really got me, was thinking of it being a pantomime. The toy maker at the end turns around and he goes, and they all live happily ever. And I'm like, oh my God. I was just like, you were doing so well. Yeah. You were all doing so well. And then you had to end it like that. I loved it. Don't let me pick up on points like that and think I didn't enjoy it, because I genuinely enjoyed it. I came away feeling really feel good about it. The cast, could not fault any of them. It was such a strong cast. It's just, I mean, you know what I'm like about liking an actual set and the skills and the craftsmanship that goes into that. So for me, not having that, it was a bit like...
At least it wasn't all projections.
That's true. That is true. If there were, they were very minimal. Very, very. But yeah, it was good. I would genuinely say go and see it. Like I say, I'm contemplating if it comes close enough, potentially seeing it again to see the Vivian and maybe a cast change. Don't pull that face. But so it's not one of those, it's like, oh, it's a one and done, I've seen it and I'm not going to bother. Like, I genuinely will contemplate it. I'd like to hear your take on it as a touring production compared to what you saw many moons ago. But they are two different ends of a spectrum, like a Palladium version and a touring version.
It's like with Charlie.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that is... There's Chitty, she's going. Go on, Jen. Go on, Jen.
So we'll end that chat there, but this weekend we had D23, the big Disney event, and excitingly Hercules was officially announced by Disney, even though we knew it was happening.
Yeah, we all knew it was happening the second that they brought them out.
But Frozen is being like, that's coming to streaming next year, which is...
And how do you feel about that?
It's great. I think the more streaming, the more pro shop shows we can get. When
was that done then?
Was after Samantha Barks came back, so in the last couple
recently
of months.
Then recently.
But yet the weird thing you mentioned, Aladdin, which is why I wanted to bring it up, is like we're still waiting for that.
Still waiting for Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, but they never announced that they were filming or releasing Beauty and the Beast.
It's one I've never seen.
But they announced.
Did they actually announce and record Aladdin then?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like coming to Disney Plus. This was like 3 years ago. So, but then they toured it. So
interesting. No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Also, I was wondering, with obviously they announced Frozen 3 is coming out.
In 2 parts, yeah.
Oh, gosh, I didn't realise that. Wicked, what you've started.
Yeah.
Do you think, obviously with Frozen now being the musical now being put onto streaming and it coming out of the jury lane, and obviously for Hercules to go in there,
next summer, yeah.
Do you think that they'll start to work on like Frozen 2 as a stage show? Do you reckon they're going to go down that route with it?
Has Frozen 2 entered the cultural zeitgeist enough?
The thing is, I genuinely think there are stronger songs in Frozen 2 than in Frozen. So I feel like it could work from an actual song point of view. It's just whether it would work from plot.
I think the plot is so... And I don't mean this like...
It's weaker.
It's also a lot more complicated. And kids don't understand what the hydrotherapy is and all that kind of stuff.
No, exactly.
It's like, the good thing about Frozen, we said this to our friends the other night, it's 2 hours and it's done.
Mm-hmm. They don't overcomplicate it.
It doesn't overcomplicate it. It's got nice puppets. It's got all the bits and bobs you want.
The sets are there, and the costumes.
And if they were to spend years developing Frozen 2 on stage and giving us a bit more of the same thing, but with a less culturally impactful version of the story, would it pay off for them?
Yeah, that's true. The one show I can see doing that genuinely is Mamma Mia. And putting Mamma Mia 2 on stage, because people will go and see it. It's the same package that you'll get. It's ABBA songs on stage. People will still go.
I mean, you could say that Mamma Mia the Party is like the continuation or something.
But the other thing you could say with Mamma Mia 2 is it's basically Mamma Mia, because it's half of the same
and
songs.
And there's going to be a third
again.
one, isn't there?
There is. Probably in 2 parts.
They won't market it as a musical. Hannah, thank you so much for discussing Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
No, thank you for letting me come on and talk about it.
Continuing its tour. Next week, I think you're going to be hearing from Thos, because he's back from Edinburgh, and I'm sure he has lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff to talk about. So I will speak to you soon. Hannah, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for listening.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Musical Talk. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk, you can visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk, where you'll find all our episodes, or you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Musical Talk.